Gambling is something that is generally understood by society to be a vice, to be something negative that you really shouldn't overindulge in. And despite that, we've seen a host of legislation repealing previous protections that were stopping the rise of gambling and online gambling. And as online gambling has been allowed to proliferate across the United States, we have seen them targeting younger and younger consumers. Something that is dangerous at the best of times and disastrous amongst a lot of economic fear and uncertainty. And currently, these companies are being allowed to prey on young people and predominantly young men in order to push their own bottom lines. And while there have been a lot of different videos that I have seen covering the advertising and kind of the different ways that people are tackling gambling, I want to talk about how dangerous gambling is and how dangerous gambling is for all of these young men that are being pushed and funneled into it in extremely predatory ways. Now, historically, young adults are not the most likely to become problem gamblers. We really see young adults struggle when it comes to their impulsivity, being more likely to chase their losses and things like that when it comes to having issues with gambling. However, I believe that with the rise of specifically online gambling, we're going to see a shift to younger and younger adults becoming problem gamblers and the host of problems that come with that. It's no coincidence that currently people in their early 20s are the fastest growing group of gamblers. Gambling companies are targeting young adults specifically, which most companies do. Young people drive trends, they have more disposable income, and they can be a little bit more impulsive. They can also have brand loyalty that lasts decades. But when it comes to gambling companies targeting young adults, it gets very insidious. When we first saw gambling start to kind of tiptoe into the mainstream or into young adults' lives, it was through kick streamers. Kick streamers who predominantly have young male audiences. And now, as we see a big focus on the push of sports gambling, that also again is most likely to attract young adults. Young adults are most likely to react to advertising seen in sports broadcasts and are also most likely to act on the advertising that they see during sports broadcasts. And we're seeing that it's working. Again, those in their early 20s are the fastest growing group of gamblers. And we're seeing that young people are very aware of gambling as something that they can participate in. And the gambling that young people are participating in is different from what we have seen in the past. In the past, you had to physically go to a casino and physically participate in those activities. Whereas now, people are participating in online gambling on their laptops, on their phones, in their own homes, alone. Research focusing on traditional gambling has looked at the relationship between distance and proximity of casinos and someone becoming a problem gambler. Now, a problem gambler is someone where their gambling becomes addictive. It starts to negatively impact their life. They are no longer participating in it as a pastime or an activity, but it is controlling their life in some way, is having a negative impact on their life in some way. And this can vary greatly, as with any addiction, on the severity of it. But they found that the closer that someone was to a casino, the more likely they were to become a problem gambler. And now, with online gambling, we're seeing all of that friction disappear. It's now right there in your pocket. Any time of day, any moment of weakness, it is right there for you to access. Research out of Italy saw that those that are participating in online gambling are 5 times more likely to become problem gamblers. Online gambling is creating a perfect storm to create problem gamblers by reducing any friction involved with getting started or continuing. And seeing a huge push for a rise in gambling is an issue at the best of times. But when you combine it with our current economic instability, it just creates more of a perfect storm. If you are watching this and you are involved in kind of the online commentary space at all, I'm sure you have heard about the different talks about whether we're in a recession, we're in a quiet recession, or even just an employment recession. But the general consensus is that we are definitely feeling economic instability. And regardless of what the numbers say, It's definitely having an effect on our society and how we're interacting with different things. We are emotionally reacting as if it is a recession. So when it comes to something like looking at how people are reacting with gambling habits and different things like that, if we socially are acting like it's a recession, we're also going to see the same indicators with things like gambling and how people gamble during recessions. It's found that increased unemployment rates also see increases in luck-based gambling. It's found that those that feel left behind or like they have been deprived from something that somebody else has gotten in the kind of economic context are more likely to participate in risk-taking behaviors, including gambling. This feeling of deprivation socially from others or feeling others are taking something from you is also something that right-wingers and MAGA have taken advantage of in young men to push them down the MAGA pipeline. And it's scary that this same thing is what can lead these same men, or even just other young men, towards gambling and towards these other really negative things for themselves. Especially when gambling is something that can leave you in such a worse position than you were in before. If you already felt hopeless and like things were being robbed from you and like you didn't have anything going for you, and then now you're in gambling debt, now you have the depression and anxiety that can come with gambling, you're now even worse off. You're now even more susceptible to radicalization, to risk-taking, to these problematic behaviors. Because gambling is something that can and does ruin people's lives and the lives of those around them. And online gambling, being the chosen vector, means that all of these people, all of these young men, disproportionately, are 5 times more likely become problem gamblers, which comes with its own host of issues. And it's not just financial issues. Yes, gambling can lead someone to going into debt, which can affect them and their family, their household. But it also affects your mental health, being more likely to get depression and anxiety if you're a problem gambler, which comes with its own host of mental and physical health concerns. Being a problem gambler also increases your risk of hypertension, sleep deprivation, cardiovascular disease. For those around problem gamblers, there's a link between being a problem gambler and domestic violence rates increasing. Gambling is not just a concern because of the finances of these young men, it is a concern for everyone around them and for their health and safety. Being a problem gambler also makes one more likely to commit crime in order to fuel their addiction. Problem gamblers will participate in theft, fraud, or embezzlement in order to get more money, in order to participate and fuel their gambling addiction. This whole host of problems is why historically we have valued restricting gambling and having legislation against gambling, and especially gambling that's right there in your pocket. It's way more likely to make you a problem gambler. And that was all very recently stripped away in so many states. We are now allowing these companies to predate on young men and ruin them physically, financially, and mentally. And that is part of why it's important not just to look at federal politics, but also at your local and state politics as well. And that can feel really hard to get into. And so I recommend that today, tomorrow, this weekend, you go and you find, for your legislative district, your Democratic Party. Now, I will be one of the first to criticize the Democratic Party. I think that they fold too frequently, that they don't go far enough for issues, but they do already have established frameworks. They have established communities and information networks that you can participate in. They will tell you about different legislation that is coming out that could potentially harm you and your community. And you can take advantage of those resources to learn about those things, to participate in activity against those, and to mobilize your community, to push your legislators to protect your community. I have really struggled over the last year, and oftentimes when making these videos, to find something to take away from these things. And I think one of the biggest things is increasing participation and knowledge of your local communities. The rollback of gambling protections and allowing online gambling to rise was a state-by-state choice. And some states stopped it from happening. So that is what I'm going to leave you with today, is that if you want to prevent more of this harm from coming to your communities, go learn more and go start participating in your local communities. So please go find your legislative district and your local Democratic Party and go get involved. Also, if you know anyone in your life who wants to participate in gambling, if you know any young men in your lives, tell them not to participate in gambling. I don't know any young men in my life who want to participate in gambling. So that one's not something that I really was focused on for this one, but if that applies to you, save them from their cardiovascular disease. Anyway, also abolish ICE.